Hello and welcome everyone, I'm Space Wizard Total War, and today we actually have a dev blog that has just dropped detailing what is coming in patch 5.3 sometime here at the end of October. We don't have an exact date for the release of this patch, but we do have notes, so let's dive on in. Hello everyone, Mitch here, Design Director on Total War Warhammer 3, back with another dev blog, this time for patch 5.3. Having now seen your reaction to patch 5.2, I can say it's been really wonderful. It was inspiring to see all of your reactions to the new content, rework, and fixes, and in particular, your excitement for the future of the game. Speaking of the future, we are already well underway with patch 5.3, and so I'll walk you through the changes and additions coming as a part of our next patch. Before that, touching on the topic of game balance, as well as taking the chance to acknowledge some of the feedback we've seen following 5.2 on our recent dev chat video, where among other things we asked for more of your thoughts. Alright, down into your feedback, we've asked a couple times and in a few places for more of your feedback because it helps us shape what we do, and I think we owe it to you where possible to highlight where this impacts us and what decisions we actually make because of your feedback. I called out in the dev chat video a few things that are on the list, and these are high priority items that we've seen a lot of feedback on or feel quite strongly about ourselves. It's important to note that the list wasn't exhaustive, just illustrative. Some of the things we'd like to tackle, which doesn't make sense. They're not going to talk about absolutely everything that they want to add to the game all in one gigantic list, especially not in a dev chat like that. They do have a time frame. So something else we noted in the video was that not everything you asked for is going to be possible in the patches, which again does make sense, with the notable example being new characters. These take a huge amount of time and effort and a much greater portion of the team's involvement to create compared to just about anything else we do. That's why you'll find new lords and characters in our DLCs and also release for free alongside them, just as you will for our next release. Creating them as part of the DLC allows us the lead time we need to do all the work to model and animate them, bring in the voice actors, etc. It's just not feasible for the patches, and that's why we wanted to set your expectations with this for our interim updates. Which again does make sense. I don't think anyone really thought we were going to be having a whole bunch of free LC heroes and lords coming in the patches. I'm sure we all hoped, but they do take a lot of work to get onto the game, so this does make sense. So moving back to the topic of your feedback, one of the major points we see consistently is game balance. This topic is multifaceted and can really apply to most aspects of the game. But in particular, I want to let you know we have heard your feedback loud and clear on both the control, public order, and corruption systems. And we agree with you. When such core systems aren't performing like we like them to, it can understandably have a huge impact on the challenge the game provides. Another topic we do hear your feedback on. Also, we're looking at challenge and control and corruption. That sounds good to me. So both these items are high priority for us to tackle going forward, albeit not in patch 5.3. So coming in the future, but not yet. Scrolling a little bit down further here. I don't have too much information to share just yet with what our plans are on these features. The complexity of dealing with both of these mechanics is larger than you might think. They are both core game systems that affect every single race in the game, and each faction's relationship with these systems can be, and often is, unique. So it's not enough for us to just say control is too easy a system to manage, and that will increase all negative sources, for example. That might improve one faction situation and make the system more challenging, but may ruin another's. Each race, and in some cases specific factions' needs, need to be considered in how they currently interact with these systems, and then balanced accordingly. For one faction, that might mean too many positive sources from their technology tree. For others, it may mean their building tree provides too many bonuses, and so on. So without going into too much detail, I want us to be thorough and take a really deep look at both of these systems. There are long-standing Total War features, and I think they suffer from a legacy of being carried from game to game without a real deep dive into what their place in the game actually entails. And this does make sense, especially with Public Order, as control and Public Order has been just about every Total War game since the very beginning, even if it's changed names ever so slightly. It's always been there, and it always seems to kind of just be a background thing that you have to manage. Some factions have no trouble managing it and have way too much Public Order, and some just struggle the entire game, so this would be cool to see what they come up with here. I could and probably will write further dev blogs on these topics closer to when we make progress, as they certainly can fill up an entire blog with just me generating some initial design thoughts, let alone a detailed overview. So in summary, there's a lot of work required to tackle these issues across the whole game. It's a challenge we're up for, and I want to thank you for your feedback and asking us to make these a high priority. So stay tuned for more on that in future patches. Just one last thing on the topic of the game balance before we dive into the patch 5.3 changes. I want to mention quickly that the Ancillary Rebalance that I've talked about in our previous developer video, we intended for this to be a part of patch 5.3, but now it won't be. I know that may be disappointing to hear, but in the interest of transparency, we wanted to let you know not only what we are releasing for you, but also the work we're doing that doesn't quite make the cut, so you can better understand our priorities, and that we are working towards things that may not always be visible. This is a normal part of game development. It's very common, and many pieces of work we start won't make the final cut for a number of reasons. One of our designers, Will, has written in more detail below about what we've tried to do so far with the ancillary system, and where we might take it going forward. Ordinarily, you don't always see the work that doesn't make the release, but particularly where it pertains to elements of your feedback that we're actively asking for, I think it's really important to let you know what work is ongoing towards addressing your points. This is an example of us hearing your feedback on things like balance and game challenge, before making moves to address it, at least in one smaller area. However, the Ancillary Rebalance just hasn't hit our quality threshold where we're happy to release it, so stay tuned for more on it in the future. Alright, continuing on here with patch 5.3, I'll share now with you a look at our next patch. The first thing you'll notice below is that we've made changes and additions to 2 Ogre Kingdoms features. As you'll likely be aware, we have Ogre Kingdoms content coming in our next DLC, so with that in mind, we wanted to take the chance now to improve certain aspects of the race, ready for when more content arrives. As I mentioned, we talked briefly about what we've been doing with the ancillary system, and that we're adding some new, interesting items. On top of all that, we'll be continuing our work improving battle maps in our second tree cluster update. We've also got a fairly big balance update to battle coming, and last but not least, we've heard how you really enjoyed new units in patch 5.2, so we've added another one, this time for the Vampire Counts. Ooh, I can't wait. For our Ogre Kingdoms rework, we have first of which being the Mercenary recruitment rework. The way the Mercenary system works for Ogres in Warhammer 3 as opposed to Warhammer 2 came with certain improvements. However, also missed the mark in a number of ways. We saw a lot of feedback asking for certain aspects of how it worked in Warhammer 2 to return, with the additional UI/UX improvements Warhammer 3 brought. As such, we made a number of changes and additions to how Ogre Mercenary recruitment now works. We've increased the Ogre Mercenary unit cap per army from 3 to 3 from 1, which is fantastic. Only having one set of bulls is really pretty lackluster. Ogre Mercenary pools now replenish at a rate of 1 unit every 5 turns. The quality of your mercenary units is now going to depend on the tier of the nearby Ogre camps, and more mercenary units are now available from Ogre camps, including, we've got Ogre Bulls that were already there, Ogre Bulls with dual weapons, Man-Eaters with the Ogre Pistols, Mournfang Cav, and a Ogre Giant, which is a pretty nice selection of mercenaries here. The only thing I might like to see change is instead of the Ogre Giant, we get Lead Belchers, as in lore they do tend to send out their Lead Belchers quite often as mercenaries, so maybe instead of their big lumbery giant boy, you take that away, and instead give them their handheld cannons. But I do quite like what we've got working with here, and I can't wait to see what more changes are coming when the Ogres actually do get their DLC, because they discussed several times that this is not all that's coming in terms of Ogre Reworks. So for our next set, we have the Bounty system. So now we'll be taking the theme of mercenary contracts and doing much more with it in the DLC. As such, we've renamed the existing contracts feature to Bounties, ready for when that happens. Along with that, we've made a number of changes and improvements. I will scroll on down here so you can actually see the bounty system itself. So we've added a new, more thematic UI as seen below. We've changed the 10-turn generation into a rolling objective bounty system. The feature was previously only available every 10 turns, which wasn't very interactive. Instead, we've now made it so the bounties are more of an interest more consistently. All objectives are now available continually, instead of only being able to select a single one. And the gameplay for bounties is more opportunistic in nature, and you don't have to accept a single mission, but it can instead tackle any and all bounties at your leisure. Oh no, this is a fantastic change. You get all 3 of the options, and I wouldn't be surprised if Goldfag has the ability to give yourself even more bounties to access, or at least even stronger ones. We can see here that you can see the issuer, you can see that you have a mission to do, so for this one here with Clan and Treacherich, it's got Bad Bloods, we need to take down Helman Gorst. Doing so will give us some treasury, some diplomatic relations with Treacherich, and then some camp growth. We don't know exactly how much, but I'm betting this is going to scale based on the difficulty or probably the faction power of whichever character you're actually going after. The other one here we have being from the Western Provinces, taking down Xing Yi, which is likely from the Burning Wind Nomads, or one of the Dissenter Lords. Gives us some treasury, which is a little bit more than Helman Gorst, relations with the Western Provinces, and the Wailing Banner, which is a pretty decent ancillary. And then one in the middle is completed, so pretty awesome. You get to see exactly how long it is before they expire, and I'm betting they're going to go ahead and rotate probably every 10 turns, so this is completed, and then once 10 turns goes away, you'll get another bounty, but we don't see that here anywhere, so we'll have to find more about that later on. Now onward to our ancillary system rebalance and new items. Originally, as part of this patch, we wanted to release our first cycle of rebalance ancillaries alongside a selection of brand new ancillaries to round out the item pools. We approach this idea from a systematic angle, defining new back-end tools to help us start the long process of cracking away at the balance of the hundreds of ancillaries found across the game. with our goal being to set sustainable practices that allow us to simultaneously work through our backlog as well as assist in balancing upcoming content. Well, I'm sure this has been a huge bit of work here. Rebalancing all of the ancillaries, I can see why this is taking a little bit longer. So we built this. I turned Russian for a moment. We built this primarily around a power budgeting matrix, where we spent an item's budget, derived from how rare it is, on effects to ensure that an item always has a value consonant with its rarity. Alongside this, we added modifiers that allow us to deliberately create outliers following specific design restrictions. This allowed us to track down items that were far more or less rare than expected, and massage them back into a more appropriate brackets. So we're seeing sweeping changes with just about every ancillary in the entirety of our pool here, which is going to change how the heroes and lords are going to work quite a bit. I cannot wait to see how this is going to be fully developed here. Back to it though, alongside adjusting the effects of the items, we had the goal of bringing in some new tech the game has seen since its inception. Barrier as a defensive stat? Yes please, no I 100% agree, more barrier for more spellcasters please. The first part of this rebalance was planned to be released as part of patch 5.3, but when we presented it to our internal feedback channels, the message we got back was loud and clear: we hadn't hit the mark. We take that kind of feedback seriously, so we've made the decision to delay this content while we take that feedback and interrogate our approach. Here are some of the key things we found in that feedback. The difference between a high-value common and a low-value uncommon could be far too slim. In that system, an item valued at 29 uniqueness, highest value common, and 30 uniqueness, lowest value uncommon, was only a single point. We're interrogating leaving larger air gaps in the values we assign to rarities, to ensure that each jump in quality is a notable increase in power. The value of specific effects was out of proportion with what they perceived as valuable. We've got a list of effects to re-review on this topic. Some effects don't feel good standing alone, like spell resistance, which absolutely. We're finding effects like these some partners and other effects to make them more universally useful items. There are certain items that were considered iconic, partially due to having very powerful effects that were brought too low by the balance adjustments. We're interrogating how high we're willing to go with our existing categories, and considering the potential impact of a new tier of rarity. Ooh, see, that would be awesome. Here for more tiers of rarity. That doesn't mean we're leaving you empty-handed, however. Patch 5.3 will still contain 18 new generic ancillaries, which will drop only for relevant factions, to help you outfit your gun toters, bow slingers, and bowpipe blasters with improvements to their range performance. See, that's very interesting. These are very specific: gun toters, bow slingers, and bowpipe. I'm betting we're at least going to get, so gun toting being probably just from the Empire and possibly the dwarfs. Bow slinging probably being from the elves, the Elgi of either the woods or just the normal Elgi. And then, of course, your blowpipes being good old Oxyotl, which, listen, I don't know if Oxyotl needed any extra help, but I am here for powering up our chameleon skinks even further. Let's go ahead and scroll on down here and actually see some of these items in effect. Additionally, we're introducing the concept of randomly dropped unique ancillaries, which are extra rare and come with particularly zesty effects, such as a map that grants massively increased campaign movement and the small chance to get lost and warped to nearby random regions. In total, 6 new unique items will be coming in 5.3 alongside the generic ancillaries. Alright, so here we can see at least 3 of them. We've got the Helm of Draiska, the Doomsinger weapon, and then of course Mad's Map, the enchanted item. So any of you lore masters out there, what does the Helm of Draiska and the Doomsinger weapon actually do? I'll have to take a look here once I'm done recording, but any of you lore masters should know what those are just by seeing the name. But Mad's Map here says a map detailing many lesser-known pathways that may or may not get you lost. You have a 20% chance to appear in a random nearby region upon ending a turn. See, I can see that being fantastic for maybe Skarbrand or any of your Warriors of Chaos that don't necessarily mind warping to nearby regions, but 50% extra movement range is insane. Yeah, no, so that with Skarbrand means just no one is safe. You might think Skarbrand is over in somewhere in the Badlands, and all of a sudden he appears right next to your city the very next turn. Sounds horrifying. Moving on along though, we have the Battle Map Tree Cluster update continued. As you will have seen in patch 5.2, we started the initiative to update the trees in certain battle maps, making them look more natural and offering better tactical options, or removing them entirely where they weren't needed. We're continuing this effort into 5.3 and have made a number of changes to an additional 46 battle maps. That's some pretty good work. And as we mentioned previously, this will be an ongoing improvement to our maps. Sweet stuff. Let's head on down to the Battle Balance update next. We're making a number of changes to Battle Balance. So a word now from our battle designer Ben on what to expect. In patch 5.3, we're shifting the multiplayer meta slightly by introducing some small and not so small changes to just about every faction in the game. Oh really? These tweaks aim to correct outlying units in various rosters and bring them back in line with what both we and the community expect to see. Beyond this, our aim is to keep the experience feeling fresh by shifting the faction meta around slightly. That's a concerning statement. I don't like hearing that from coming from Destiny. But here we go. Special thanks to Catholic Alcoholic, lovely, and the rest of the team who puts together the community-sourced balance thread. Good work, lads. That is a brilliant way for us to temperature check the meta of the battle side of the game alongside our own balance tests, feedback, opinions, and metrics. Also, special thanks to our affiliated content creators for putting out videos and sending in feedback that highlight where our battle balance could be improved. Some highlights are going to include several changes to Nakai's innate attributes and army effects in campaign. We've got Vanguard deployment, Woodsman, and Terror. Small rework will see to the Black Coach's abilities that now intensify based on how many enemies have been killed. Additional effects for the Spell Glean magic, so you'll gain Spell Mastery on self and Silence for the enemy. Okay, so that's going to be one of the single strongest spells for Tzeentch going forward. You can shut down any of the high-tier spellcasters like that, or any just high-tier units with very good abilities. That makes it such a good spell. Huge buff there. Buffs to the Skull Cannon and Blood Shrine to make them more credible threats. I wonder what that means. It likely means in melee. A rework to Wildwood Rangers Guardians of the Wildwood ability. Nerfs to Kislev? No. Specifically, some gentle multiplayer cost increases and a reduction to the War Sled's collision power. Well, rest in peace, our Catherine campaign. It was probably necessary, though. Watching War Sleds blast through Chosen like they don't exist is, while awesome, doesn't make the most sense, balance-wise. Demonic Locust abilities have been increased to 55-meter range to better work on Ultra unit size. That's glorious. A small rework to how the Arc of Sotek deals its damage. Ooh, interesting. And more leadership for Ghost-type units. More large units feature collision attacks. Your Tomb Scorpion, your Kadai Destroyer, your Toad Dragon, and more. Fantastic. Large units are starting to feel even better, at least the ones that have already received the extra collision attacks, so this is just going to make your large boys and your Doom stacks even more scary. And we've got even more buffs for the Chariot of the Gods, rather, so Cetra will be proud. As ever, if you have any feedback regarding battle balance, be sure to hit up our forum. We're always lurking and reading. Ben. Thank you so much, Ben. And lastly, we have a new unit, the Grave Guard with Halberds. We know everyone really enjoyed when we added the new Orcs and Goblins units with weapon variants in patch 5.2, and adding small new additions like that is something we'd like to continue doing where possible. As such, we've now added a new unit for the Vampire counts. The Grave Guard with Halberds. Oh, how glorious. Ready to shore up the undead against the relentless onslaught of cavalry, dragons, and everything in between, and at a much more reasonable price point than those haughty Blood Knights. Oh yeah, we can even see what they're going to look like on the battlefields. They're just looking like your normal Grave Guard, but handed some halberdiers, or some halberds. I would like to see maybe a little bit more variance in the halberds, but all in all, this is a very fantastic. Love new unit variants, and never going to say no. So they're good old armor-piercing, anti-large, charge defense versus large foes, of course, and their stats aren't the best because they're Grave Guard, but there's all sorts of stuff in the Vampire Counts skills and research tree to buff them up further. I love to see it. It's going to be an awesome unit. Can't wait to try it out. But that's all for me today. Once again, thanks for reading, and please do continue providing us with your feedback. We're looking forward to when you can get your hands on patch 4.3, which is coming this October. Cheers, Mitch. Thank you so much, Mitch, for putting this dev blog together, but let me know what you all think about what's coming. How do you feel about the changes to the Ogre Mercenary mechanics and the bounty system? And what do you think about the upcoming variant of the Grave Guard, the Halberdiers, and even the Ancillary Rework? What are you thinking is going to be coming on in, and what new, unique ancillaries from lore do you think they should be adding that may not be in the game already? But that's going to be all the time for me for now. Thank you all so much for stopping by today's Warhammer news video. If you all enjoyed, remember to leave a like for the like god and a sub for the sub throne. I'll see you all in the next one.